Good morning. I'm Simon Clarke. I'm the CEO of American Lithium. American Lithium is a developer of advanced lithium projects in the Americas, focused on Nevada and also some really high-grade, high-quality projects in Peru. With me today, I have Ted O'Connor, who was one of the senior people from Plateau Energy, and Plateau Energy was a company that American Lithium acquired last year, which brought in our Peruvian assets. So Ted was a key member of the team that built the asset base at Plateau, starting first with uranium, and then made a major discovery in 2018, 2019 of the Falchani Lithium Project, which is a high-grade, near-surface project in southern Peru. And Ted was part of the discovery team on that. And before he was with Plateau, he was actually senior management at Cameco, worked around the world with them looking at new projects. And following Fukushima, when Cameco very much retrenched to their producing assets, Ted joined Lawrence Stefan, who is our COO, and again was one of the other key technical players at Plateau who built the asset base. So we're delighted at American Lithium that Ted joined our team when we acquired Plateau in May of last year. We look at it that we acquired three key assets: Falchani, Macusani, and a very strong technical team in Peru that had found an amazing asset and taken it through to discovery and actually to proving you can precipitate lithium without the need for additional refining at Falchani. So Ted is a key part of our management team and brings a lot of technical expertise and knowledge. So delighted to be on the call today, and we'll hopefully be able to paint a deeper technical picture on the assets.
Great. Simon, thank you very much for that introduction. And Ted, my goodness, following that, you've got a lot to live up to in the next half an hour.
This is true.
I'm very much looking forward to kind of hearing about all three assets. American Lithium with uranium and lithium. I mean, there's quite a hot sectors to be in. You've picked the commodities rather well. I mean, I don't think you could have chosen anything which is going to have a more spectacular kind of run in the last couple of years. Did the uranium just come in by accident because you were looking at Falchani?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We had a good run in 2020 with the discovery of our maiden resource in Nevada and the whole critical minerals focus in the US. So at that time, we had a good run in our stock price, lots of interest, mainly driven by a lot of US retail. And it gave us the currency in our share price towards the end of 2020 to start to look at other opportunities to bring in some geographic and geological diversity, which we thought made sense. So we looked at a number of projects, and our belief is that Falchani is a hidden gem, and it was in Plateau that it had some issues with running out of cash. There'd been some publicized issues around ownership of about 20% of their concessions in Peru. And so, we looked at it as a very opportunistic acquisition of a first-class asset that, again, we believe is a hidden gem. So along with Falchani, Macusani, which was the main operating subsidiary of Plateau, had originally been a uranium story.
Yeah, I remember. I remember Ian Stalker talking about it way back. Ted, was Ian there in the early days with you there, Ted?
Yes, Ian and I merged with Lawrence's company to bring in the final piece of the uranium story on the Macusani Plateau. Ian Stalker was the chair of the company, Plateau Energy Metals, and I was the CEO until Lawrence kind of took over, and then we had a more financial markets person come in, and I remained reverted back to being mostly technical in the company.
Great. So sorry, Simon, we interrupted you very rudely.
No problem. No, that's absolutely fine. So yes, so we acquired Macusani along with Falchani, and again, as I mentioned, what we believe is one of the best technical teams out there in terms of discovering unique assets and proving that you can actually take them to battery grade precipitation. So obviously that team has come in and helped us in Nevada. So long term, we recognize that a uranium asset is never probably going to recognize full value within a lithium developer. And at some stage, we will look to put the asset in its own vehicle, get it funded separately, and drive it ahead. There'll be cross relationships, some cross management and board, but at some stage, we're all in agreement as a team that it needs to be in its own vehicle. But for now, it's a great asset. There's a lot of synergies between the two assets. They're roughly 25 kilometers apart on the Macusani Plateau, which is a unique area of mineralization in Peru, roughly 40 by 80 kilometers, I think, Ted. It's a very large plateau. And so, for now, we're going to do some more work on it, but we will be starting to put the uranium concessions in their own separate subsidiary with a view to doing a separate transaction for that company to stand on its own. So
it's kind of strategically non-core, but valuable in its own right.
Absolutely.
Peru and uranium, what's that relationship? Because I just don't, for a country to be a uranium producer, they need to get their head around what that means. And there are not many uranium producing countries in the world. Has Peru, particularly with the political turmoil and the kind of the tax issues and kind of has it got its head around uranium as a potential product that it could export?
Yeah, they actually have. So when in the late 2000s, we were working away, drilling away, finding uranium resources. There was about 5 different disparate companies, separate companies, and now it's all under one roof. But we were all marching ahead together, and I was with Cameco down there as their technical representative on a joint venture, in Lawrence and Macusani Yellowcake were drilling away themselves, and Lawrence's company and the Cameco joint venture, we actually helped the government formulate their exploration stage uranium regulations. So there was that, because we were the first and only people looking for and finding uranium, and now there's only one company, us, with any uranium resources in Peru. We've been driving that process with the government. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we started looking at alongside the Ministry of Energy and Mines people, what does Peru need to allow uranium production? And there's no change in the mining regulations required. There's no change in the environmental regulations required. There's only sort of the shipping and export and monitoring side of the equation that needs addressing. So the Canadian and U.S. governments, alongside Peru, have helped them formulate draft, we'll call it regulations. It's not the Mining Act, it's just implementation of what needs to be done to get uranium yellowcake out of the country. So Peru was one of the founding members of the International Atomic Energy Agency in 1953. They have a nuclear reactor themselves. It's a research reactor that produces isotopes. So they know how to get uranium fuel into the country, and they have a monitoring nuclear authority. It just doesn't really quite pertain to mining. So this institute, IPEN it's called, they are working with the Ministry of Mining and Energy to implement these regulations. They've already been drafted, but as you say, with the political situation, no one's ever introduced it into Congress yet. So it sits drafted and everyone's happy, the government, us, we're happy with the framework, and we've been hearing for about 2 years that it's 6 months away. So they're on side with future uranium production. It's just getting the regulatory framework in place.
Oh, well, I've been waiting for an exploration license in Ecuador for 3 years, so we're in good company.
Yeah. I think it's, I mean, Merlin, the only thing I would add, obviously, is Peru was hardest hit on a per capita basis by COVID. And then you've had some political instability. So it really isn't a question of if, it's just a question of when. I mean, it's on the, as Ted said, it's on the books to be made into statute or whatever. And we believe with a bit of stability in the government, which hopefully we'll see over the next few months here, that it will actually get through Congress.
Now, just to kind of a headline on that, on Macusani, just 53 million pounds, a grade of just under 250 ppm, leaches nicely. It sits in that same sedimentary basin as Falchani. There was a PEA carried out in 2016, different worlds, different prices. I saw the names on the study. I certainly wouldn't have chosen that group. I can't speak for the quality of that piece of work, but the question is, what are you doing now on Macusani? Kind of technically, what's the plan?
Well, the plan is to do some more drilling. Certainly, we've had success prospecting adjacent to existing resources, and we have some targets in between and to extend deposits, but we also need to do infill drilling because, as you mentioned, we have 52 million pounds in the indicated category, 72 million pounds in the inferred category. So globally, it's well over 100 million pounds of U3O8. It is low grade, but with all three of our projects, the geology is unique, which translates into inexpensive processing. In a couple of cases, there's the potential to upgrade. I certainly can get into it a bit more on the technical side. So because the mineralization is so unique, all at Macusani, Falchani, and TLC, it translates into probably the best, or one of the better claystone deposits in Nevada or in the world is TLC.
TLC. Can we just? I want to kind of wrap up on Macusani first. Can you just pull up a quick map and just kind of show me where you're going to be doing the infill work and where you're going to be doing the expansion work and what the kind of what the potential is? You got a kind of a. Sure, I saw on your website you've got some nice kind of resource maps of the kind of the various little bodies. And
for sure.
While if you can think and pull something up or even talk and do two things at the same time. The question I've got is what is the geology, and I saw you put out some new metallurgical test work in January, or was it February? What does the geology mean? Wow, look at that.
So the uranium mineralization is all what we call hexavalent, meaning uranium's in an oxidized state. It's 99+% the mineral autunite, meta-autunite.
So, and it's soluble.
It's incredibly soluble, and it infills fractures and pore spaces in the host rock, which are 7 million year old frothy volcanic rhyolites. So what we're seeing here is the rhyolite rock that has nice disseminated and some fracture controlled autunite on it. And and there's a spectacular twin drill hole. Where we've been able to build our resources is where the mineralization becomes more lens-like, more flat lying. And it's a unique style of deposit. It's hosted in volcanic rocks of 7 million years old, but the mineralization is all less than 1 million years old. So it's not a volcanic related deposit in the IAEA uranium deposit category. It's hosted in volcanic rocks, but it's more like a surficial or a sedimentary style uranium deposit because the uranium precipitates out subhorizontally due to water influx. And the water source, we've proven with a PhD, is the melting glaciers to the west of the project, scavenging uranium from within these enriched volcanic paraluminous rhyolites and depositing it in the same current conditions, the same conditions to now. So cold, high altitude, low temperature process. So because the uranium got there easily and in a benign way, it comes out incredibly efficiently. We're talking 9 kilograms per ton acid consumption, which is, unheard of. Yes, it's low grade, but it's quite inexpensive. So the PEA we did in 2016 was based on $50 selling price of uranium, 5% royalties, which are far less in Peru now than what we estimated, and we were coming in with $17.28 cash costs for production for a pound of U3O8, and that included the royalties and taxes and everything. And like I say, we use $50. Current spot is 62.50, 63.50 right now. So we're back into the post-Fukushima, pre-Fukushima uranium price environment.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the Crux investor audience, I think, pretty much started on a uranium or on a uranium beat. So, the Crux as a platform is very, very up on uranium and the uranium thesis. Just in terms of the precipitation in situ, I mean, if you've got a meteoric water, essentially glacial waters scavenging the uranium, what's the precipitation mechanism? Because it's, there's no change in temperature or pressure or chemistry. There has to be something that drops it out, where it concentrates it, where it drops out.
So what the model envisions is this uranium bearing water sourced, the water sourced from the glaciers. It travels through this porous rock, and it either interacts with existing groundwaters or some kind of flux differential. So what I mean by that is we have the start of an erosional channel. The water gets flushed out, so the uranium just drops right out and the waters keep going once you accelerate the fluid flux. Very, very benign. And I actually have done a couple of presentations at International Atomic Energy Agency, week-long conferences, trying to get them to take Macusani out of the volcanic related deposit category, which they have now. So it's unique. There's no other deposit like it on Earth.
No, I like it, and I'm sure I could carry on asking geological questions till the cows come home, but I feel as if I should move on. Okay. Have you got any maps on? There we go. There we go.
Yeah, for sure. So this is basically our uranium deposit outlines, where we have drilled known resources and their footprints. And this is where we have our 52 million pounds indicated and 72 million pounds inferred. And we need to obviously upgrade the category of resource, but where we're focusing is in these two areas where we've actually put out some results on some prospecting work, both radiometrics and chemical assays of surface grab samples that have shown we can extend a Colibri deposit at least another kilometer or so, kilometer and a half. And so this deposit here, Tantamaco, it came via the Cameco, came from me, I guess we'll say, and it's about 25 million pounds in this deposit. And Lawrence's company was drilling over here, and Cameco was marching to the southeast, Lawrence was marching to the northwest, but we never quite got there. And geology doesn't stop at property boundaries. So we're going to focus in between these two deposits. And there's also 40 or 50 other surface showings outside of this, but we want to start with the stars to expand the resource and do our infill drilling. So we have like 70 drill holes planned, perhaps 12,000 meters. We're awaiting final exploration and environmental permits at the moment for Macusani.
And is it what height is the plateau?
It's about 4,500 meters on average. It varies from 4,200 to 5,000. But the interesting thing about our processing options, they're not dependent on oxygen. These are oxide, like +6 uranium minerals, and they don't require oxygen. And similar with Falchani, there's no oxygen detriment. It's just a bit cooler, and pumps and people have to work harder at that altitude.
Yeah, I bet they do. Fascinating. So 12,000 meters. So the work program this year is 12,000 meters of drilling. And are you going to rework a study? I mean, is that part of the process?
Yeah, exactly. So we're looking at a larger resource base. We've also had some incredible success upgrading this material. From the photos, you can see that the green autunite mineralization is in the pores. It's relatively fine grained, and so we've been able to successfully upgrade the uranium mineralization from a head grade on the order of 250, 300 ppm up to well over 600 just through normal scrubbing and screening. And what that does is we're able to retain 85% of the uranium in 30 to 35% of the mass, because the uranium mostly reports to the fine fraction. So we're going to explore upgrading, but also once you have something that's more than 500 parts per million or 1 pound per ton, the original PEA was a large heap leach operation. We're looking at making a much smaller footprint tank leach because it leaches so quickly and so efficiently and we'll get the benefit of added recoveries. We'll be able to bring in some lower grade resources to upgrade, because the economic cutoff for our mineralization is 75 parts per million. So we can bring in lots of material.
And what's the kind of geometry or the geomorphology like? I mean, are these flat-lying kind of aquifers, and how thick are they and how deep are they? So
they're all near surface because like within 100 meters of surface. They are flat-lying. They can range from 10 to 50 meters thick, depending on whether you're at the center or at the edges.
Yeah.
These, there's a series of deposits. They range from 3 million pounds up to 30 million pounds each, and a few in between there, obviously. So the idea is to have separate open pits going, feeding a central processing facility.
Thank you. Really, really interesting. And I'm sure that will add, I'm sure you will realize value for shareholders in due course. But we better move on to the main course.
Yeah, sure. So if you want to talk about, we'll talk about Falchani Lithium Project in Peru, because it's the lesser known of our two big lithium projects. And once again, it's in this volcanic 7 million year old volcanic event. It's slightly older than the rocks that host the uranium. It's also a unique lithium deposit in the world. It's hosted in tufaceous volcanic glass. So it has the same chemistry as a pegmatite. It's highly evolved, except it's been exploded and deposited as a volcanic ash in what we think is a crater lake caldera system.
I'm just trying to get there's so many new concepts. I'm trying to get my head around it. So you're effectively saying that it was a pegmatite. A pegmatite will typically form at depth, kind of peripheral to a magmatic system with long-lived enrichment or fractionation process. Kind of, it's a highly evolved fluid that leads to a pegmatite. But what you're saying is that at that point of evolution, there was some kind of phreatomagmatic event which ejected this fluid, which then froze either midair or on contact.
Exactly. So these rocks basically have no business being on the surface of the earth as volcanic rocks.
Yeah.
The uniqueness of the eruptions comes from the amount of fluorine, boron, all these highly evolved things that lower the melt's viscosities and allow them to travel and explode. So they have the bulk composition of a lithium pegmatite.
Yeah.
But they're frozen. So if you know anything about spodumene production, or like how they get lithium out of spodumene or lepidolite, the mica and the peroxenoid that hosts lithium in these pegmatites, they have to essentially remelt them, quench them, and then the lithium can come out. They break the bonds. So our Falchani rocks are essentially air-quenched pegmatitic material. So it's already in a glassy state. So that's why we're able to leach it using warm sulfuric acid, approximately 75 to 90 degrees C, and the lithium and other things come out quite easily. We're looking at something on the order of 150 to 200 kilograms per ton of sulfuric acid consumption. So not incredibly high, but we're talking about 3,000 parts per million average grade for this deposit. And just to put it in large terms, so we have 1 million tons of lithium carbonate equivalent in the indicated category and 3.8 million tons of lithium carbonate equivalent in the inferred category. And like I say, unique mineralization equals inexpensive processing. So we did a PEA in 2020, just looking at the lithium only.
Yeah.
And we were sub $4,000 per ton lithium carbonate using $12,000 a ton pricing.
Sorry. The PEA in 2020 was just the lithium, as
opposed to, well, we found that through the processing we can extract. We believe, we're working on this right now with ANSTO in Australia to look at byproducts. Certainly potassium, so sulfate of potash, a highly sought after fertilizer in Peru and everywhere, but especially in Peru for their high value crops. And we believe that's a viable byproduct because it comes out when the lithium does. It behaves kind of like lithium in the large ion lithophile element sense. And there's some other things, cesium and rubidium, that are enriched in our rocks because they're highly evolved before volcanism. And so we're looking at, okay, what byproduct potential is there? So the plan is, yes, we're going to do some more drilling. I'll show you some mineralization and maps in a minute, but we're going to update the PEA to include some of these co-products as well as a larger resource base that will be even closer to surface.
So the drilling you'll do is a mixture of taking the inferred, some of the inferred to the measured and indicated, or some of the indicated and inferred up scale to measured, indicated, and inferred, and also you're going to be targeting new resources through
just expanding along the edges.
Yeah,
as well as looking a bit further afield where we've had some prospecting success. So
and
if I
please pull them out. I was just going to ask about the mineral processing. So it's not a welded tuff. It's not a it's not so hard. Oh well, it doesn't look hard at all. Yeah. It looks as if it's quite friable.
It is quite silicified. It's basically 50-60% silica in the overall chemical formula. So if you think of a granite or a pegmatite, that's the same composition. So it is quite glassy and indurated. So yes, it needs drilling and blasting, and it needs
crushing and grinding.
A fair bit of crushing. Yeah, it does, because it's mostly glass. It does break quite easily. Like the work index isn't extreme because it's just glass.
I mean, off the top of your head, can you remember what the work index is? Is it kind of a 14 or something? Or no, okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm not trying to trip you up. And when it fractures, because it's glassy, does that? I mean, because it's glassy, it's essentially it doesn't have a mineral texture. It's kind of a frozen. It's aphanitic. I'm just trying to work out kind of in terms of what it means in terms of the mineral processing. It's you just crush and grind, and then you've got the surface area. It's fine.
Yeah, and that's all that's required here because glass is notoriously unstable. So the acid basically gets everything out of it. We did have some, obviously these rocks are periluminous, so we've had some, I'll call it, our main issue here is trying to get rid of the aluminum, which we've successfully done in our test work. Once again, we've done it at Ansto. It's all in the PEA, but we crush between, there's a sweet spot between 300 micron and 150, 200 microns. Somewhere in the 250, that seems to be what we have to grind to. So not super fine, but fine enough.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, when you think of the kind of West Australian gold mines, most of them are being ground down to 75 to or 70 to 100 microns. So it's not. It's not.
Exactly. So
unreasonable.
this outcrop is from an area just southwest of our resource area. It's about an 80-meter thick section. This isn't the full 80. It goes down the hill behind me, but it's outcropping Falchani lithium tuffs, 3,500 to 4,000 ppm, and it's currently obviously not in our resource area. And this is where we're going to be starting our expansion part of the drilling. And I'll show you on a map. There's just a close-up of a piece of the drill core, and you can see how layered and aphanitic, fine-grained, essentially silica. And so when we first saw these rocks and didn't have the chemistry, we scratched our heads and basically stopped the discovery hole in this rock. Got the chemistry back, and I was CEO at the time and had to submit samples to a different lab because all the rocks at Macusani and Falchani are enriched in lithium. The rocks that host the uranium deposits average maybe 600 parts per million lithium in the resources. And this was 3,000, 4,000 coming back from the lab. So I didn't quite trust it. So we sent it off to another lab, confirmed it before we started waving our arms about it. But
were you looking for lithium at that stage?
We were. We initially went down there looking for uranium because there were surface showings of uranium down there, and we had never had access from the local community until 2017, 2018, where they invited us to come and talk to them because they heard how much of a good impression we were in the northern communities that we deal with on the uranium side. So and they allowed us to come down and prospect. So we found some surface uranium showings in these yellow rocks.
Yep.
It didn't amount to much. These are the rhyolites that host the uranium. And then we entered into this pink lithium tuff bracketed by upper and lower breccias. And this is an east-west cross-section through the deposit. And I don't know, it's probably hard to read, but there's 340 meters of 2,900 ppm lithium from stem to stern in this hole. So we built up these resources.
And you're going to drill, is this all within the resources at the moment? So you're going to drill outside of that?
Yeah, so if I can call up this map. So here's Macusani up here, and about 20 kilometers away is the Falchani Lithium Project.
Same altitude?
Within reason, it's probably 200 meters higher elevation.
Okay.
Maybe 45 to 4,700. So there's the resource outline, inferred and then indicated in the blue. And here's our focus for infill drilling. And that outcrop called Tres Hermanas is right in here. So obviously easy win, negative strip ratio.
The photograph you showed me.
Yes, exactly. So that's going to be the immediate focus for the expansion. It's obviously open up here. We haven't done any drilling, but if you understand caldera systems, this is not a normal shape for a caldera lake. It's circular. And then we also want to do some exploration testing of a new discovery area we have about 6 kilometers to the west. We call it Calcaya. There's well over 3,000 ppm lithium in outcrop rocks. We've got 2 or 3 different targets over there. It looks like the rocks are slightly different than Falchani, but they're still volcanic, perluminous, rhyolitic compositions. But they're not quite as tufaceous. They're more look like flows. So anyway, we're going to drill a few exploration holes out to the west.
Yeah. No, I love a good spodumene story. It's sometimes nice to hedge your bets without going down the ion exchange route. Yeah, it's when we looked at it, Merlin, we were, as I say, the things that blew us away with Falchani was just how it's hosted. We think the resource engineer was very conservative as to how they classified, but again, it was a unique style of mineralization. And just the processing cost and the ability to precipitate battery grade without any further refining on I think the second pass through the flow sheet. And it's a relatively, I don't think any flow sheets are straightforward, but it's relatively straightforward. So this would be a project that would be ready for feasibility, other than the fact that you do need to reclassify the inferred and indicated up to M&I, to provide your reserves as you move into feasibility. So that's why a big reason for a lot of the drilling, upgrade the resource, expand the resource, but also, as Ted said, bring in the byproducts into the PEA. So the first step will be a new PEA, and then we'll move it straight into feasibility. So have you got a target date for that PEA? We're looking at, we've had a few delays with the political situation and COVID in Peru. So we were looking at the end of Q3, and we're still pushing for that, but it may slip into the beginning of Q4. But that's the kind of timeline on that. So we've already started the environmental side for feasibility. We're into the EIA that's required for feasibility. And the drilling, because that's going to be a key component. You need to get the MRE2 out. That's going to be a key input into the study. Correct. So are you drilling yet? We are still. We're mobilized. We're just waiting the final permit, which we actually expected to get several months back, but again, with the changes in the ministry and the number of ministers changing in Peru, it's just literally if you look at Peru, those mines that are in operation are doing fantastically well in this commodity environment, but those that are looking for exploration or development permits are kind of stalled whilst we wait for the administrative backlog to clear, but we're close. Yeah. If you've got the framework within which to work, you can work fine. But it's getting that framework set up that's the tricky bit. Yeah, exactly. Good. Well, it's a good thing that you've got another project in North America. But just to check. If I spilt my cup of tea on the Macusani plateau, would it drain to the Pacific or to the Atlantic?
It goes to we're across the height of land, so it goes to the north and then east out to the Amazon. So we're at the extreme headwaters of the Amazon system. It goes to the Pacific, or sorry, Atlantic.
Yeah. And if you, are there logistical challenges? I mean, is that a kind of, is the route to the coast, is that kind of a big part of the economics? I mean, or is it not?
It's not. About 8 years ago, the Interoceania Highway was completed. It joins essentially the Pacific to the Atlantic. It goes right next to the plateau, the start of the plateau, within 2 or 3 kilometers of our easternmost project area. So it's right there, and it's a paved road all the way to the coast of Peru, and it basically joins to the port of Matarena and
Fine. So it's
Ica. So it's excellent.
So it's just it's a basic ton per kilometer dollar cost calculation.
Yeah, for sure. And there is, just to the west of the plateau, there's a rail line that joins Cusco with Puno. So we're looking at that too. And then obviously it heads to the coast. There's a hydropower plant about 30 kilometers north of us as the water starts becoming more turbulent as it heads towards Brazil. And it's got excess power and plans for expansion. So the power line, the high voltage power line, runs essentially along this road, this Interoceania Highway, and it's a couple kilometers east of the project. So we're not wanting for infrastructure. Once we're up on the plateau, the roads are pretty basic. We'll obviously have to do some upgrading and all that, but it's pretty well positioned.
The other key thing from a South American perspective, Merlin, especially when you look at brines and things, obviously, is water, and this is an area of significant rainfall.
Thank you for reminding me of that. Good. Now, in the interests of time and brevity, we better crack on to TLC, Tonopah Lithium Claystones. Another unique project. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So, what makes TLC unique among claystone deposits in Nevada and elsewhere is these are, once again, cold freshwater systems. There's freshwater flora and faunal fossils, and the claystones were kind of laid down, and the lake water, rich in lithium, essentially gets precipitated in the sediments directly at the time they're being lithified. And there's some kind of electrochemical process going on because the clays are quite reduced in a chemical sense, and the lithium is not particularly bound in any mineral lattice. It's not like we have hectorite or any of these hydrothermal clay minerals that host lithium. It's more loosely bound. It still takes a fair bit of acid, 200 to 300 kilograms per ton acid consumption to get it out. The temperatures are significantly less than Falchani. It's only about 60 degrees to make that happen. But there's a bit of carbonate that chews up the acid. That's where the most of the consumption comes from.
What temperature was Falchani?
90.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah. So the carbonates buffer the acid to a degree.
Exactly. But
the you've got loosely bound lithium.
Yeah, and so we've had leach testing results that the lithium comes out in 10 to 15 minutes out of these clay stones, which is unique because it's cold freshwater system and loosely bound lithium. It's not in in lithium minerals per se in the crystal lattice. It's either adsorbed onto the clays or some of the organic carbonaceous material that's like plant detritus. It's not coal. It's just little, precursors.
Microfragments. Yeah.
Exactly. So there has to be some electrochemical. We're trying to study this at a couple of different universities to really kind of unravel, like we did with Falchani, like we did with Macusani, to hit it with some science. But we're already running. We have a huge resource. I can state it if you want. We have 3.35 million tons of lithium carbonate equivalent in the measured category. 2 million tons lithium carbonate in the equivalent in the indicated, and 1.76 in inferred. So it's quite a large resource already. We are doing some drilling at the moment, infill, slightly expansion, as well as some exploration, but it's a lot of it's for confirmation, not to necessarily increase the category of the measured, where that's going to go, but more for bulk sampling. So we're doing some large diameter core drilling within the resource and poking along the sides to upgrade the indicated and inferred to measured. So that's what we're doing right now. The labs are incredibly backlogged in Nevada because, every commodity is firing. So, we're looking at almost 3-4 months of delays between the time they get the samples to the time we get our results. So we haven't got many results from our drilling yet. We know there's claystone, but we don't have any chemistry on them.
That drilling that you've just been describing, which is kind of a little bit of expansion, infill expansion, plus the metallurgical test work. Where are you doing that metallurgical test work? Is that being also done by ANSTO in Australia?
Well, we've done a bunch with Hazen, SGS in Canada. And we've done a lot in Peru, and now we've sent ANSTO a bunch of samples. So we have a few different recipes for the 3 different processing options that they all work. There's sulfuric acid warm, there's hydrochloric acid warm, and there's roasting, and all of them work quite well. And we're looking at, how best to process this from an economic as well as an environmental footprint standpoint. So that's being done at ANSTO at the moment, and they're also going to be precipitating product, and we're going to get that tested to see where it sits, in the battery grade category, or what impurities we might have to deal with, et cetera, et cetera. So that work is ongoing at the moment.
I see you've just contracted DRA to lead the PEA.
Yeah, they worked on exactly these 3 options for us at Falchani, as did ANSTO. So we decided to kind of go with DRA and ANSTO as the main, critical lab after we have our recipes. So yeah, they worked on they've had their hands in about 20 different lithium projects DRA have, including Falchani, but we like, and then they have some direct claystone experience as well, with, I believe, Bacanora in Mexico.
Yeah.
So here's just a typical picture of our claystone, very fine grained, carved, layered claystone. You can see it's not red. I'm sorry, it's not red. It's not pink. It's reduced, and this material has 1,300 parts per million lithium in it.
Yeah. Perhaps a question for you, Simon. Do you feel this is do you feel the market kind of appreciates this asset?
I think, Merlin, if I look at it from a market perspective right now, I think we actually get most of our market valuation from TLC. I think, we were a real retail story up to, a year and a half ago. And obviously we've been looking to institutionalize the company more and market it more widely. So I think I don't think we're fully known yet. And I think when you look at us against the Nevada peers like Lithium Americas and Ioneer and Cypress, we're not as well known as those. I think we're getting there. And I think, as Ted said, the unique characteristics of the claystone, the fact it's weakly bound, it may be lower grade than Thacker, for example, but we have a lot of advantages, we believe, in the processing and just location. I mean, in terms of permitting, we're south of the sage grouse and sage grouse grass issues and north of the desert turtle. We're in the high desert, very benign from an environmental and a cultural perspective. So, when we did our plan of operations for the current drilling program, we had a public consultation period of 30 days and we had nothing but letters of support. So quite refreshing for a large lithium claystone project in Nevada. So I think we've got a lot of advantages, but I do think we do need to do more to get the project known out there. But it's getting there. I mean, we now have 3 analysts covering us. It looks like 2 more are coming on. So we're starting to get the name out there. And as Ted said, it's a very large resource that could produce significant tons of lithium for 100 years if you chose to. So. And we are focused. We've had delays, as Ted mentioned, in some of the labs, but we now have ANSTO fully engaged. We've done, the beauty of Ted and Lawrence and the technical team is we were able to do a lot of technical work quickly, and that's now being validated and approved on by ANSTO as we look to get our PEA finalized by mid-year.
Thank you. That's really helpful. You've mentioned in your presentation, there's kind of a parallel between Silver Peak, the Albemarle asset. Is it a similar geology? Is it the same thing?
Ted, I mean, Silver Peak is obviously more on the brine side. This is I would point out that American Lithium, and again, I don't want to knock competitors, but American Lithium did start out life as a Nevada brine-focused company back in the 2015 kind of time frame, when there was a lot of focus on Albemarle and Pure Energy and a number of the brine plays, and we just couldn't make it work. It was before my time, but they drilled a number of projects, and our conclusion was the brines in Nevada are not of sufficient grade. And at that time, we were very much advised to look at the claystones. Very much like when gold went from being high-grade, narrow vein focused in the 70s, 80s to these huge open pit, lower grade projects in Nevada that made a lot of the majors, like Barrick and Newmont and players like that. And so there's a lot of commentators believe that the lithium claystones in Nevada will do the same thing for lithium and be the main source of domestic lithium supply in the US. And certainly from our perspective, it's, we looked at a number of projects and really like TLC. And as Ted said, again, the unique characteristics of it, I think, really give us a very large opportunity in general. I mean, my view is all of those lithium claystones in Nevada will be produced. But I think, where we're situated is really going to help us on the permitting side.
That's great. I've seen some price curves of sulfuric acid in North America, which are a little bit kind of alarming. So I think, I'm just kind of bouncing ideas around. A lot of this is going to come down to kind of realistic numbers in terms of your reagent costs, for want of a better word, and metallurgical test work. Once you get those elements through, then it's going to be much easier for the market to digest, so to speak, and to kind of be able to kind of value it more cleanly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly, because how do you value lithium claystone in the ground? Yes, there are metrics, but the proof will be in the PEA, of course, or more proof. But we're not planning for an incredible sticker shock when we see our potential operating costs. However, they probably will be higher than previous people who used 2018 numbers for sulfur or sulfuric acid at $30 a ton for sulfur, whereas it's quite a bit more expensive than that right now on the spot market. But hopefully things will stabilize.
It's also why we like hydrochloric, Merlin, and why we're looking at roast. I mean, the nice thing about Nevada, like TLC claystones, is we have 3 very viable processing options, and so we're going to run with all 3 until we have to make a choice as we move through feasibility in terms of which one to back. And that, we also have flexibility in terms of, do we produce a carbonate or a hydroxide? And so, we think, let's run with all 3. Let's maximize them all, and depending on what the input costs are at the time, and also the environmental picture, which is more and more important, obviously, we'll then make our choice. Great.
Well, gentlemen, you've introduced so many new concepts. My poor little brain today, I'm about to pop.
I've only just recovered. Before we merged with Plateau, I had brown hair. Now it's white.
Good. Thank you both very much. I look forward to following your progress in the course of this year. You've got lots of exciting stuff going on. I hope there's progress sooner than later in terms of drilling in Peru. I think that'll be just great to see those wheels turning there again. And very much look forward to reading the PEA during the middle of the year from TLC.
Merlin, thank you. Great questions, and that was a great conversation.
Good.
As always, I learned a lot from Ted as well. Every day's a school day.
Great, lovely. Catch you later.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.